Hey, what's up guys, it's Darius, and if you're looking for a small iPhone, you're in luck. Two very good options were just released this year, the iPhone SE back in April and the iPhone 12 mini just a month ago. Well, I've tested both extensively, and in this video, I'll tell you which one is right for you. First, let's talk about price, as that is a crucial, often a deciding factor when purchasing a new smartphone. iPhone SE starts at $399 and iPhone 12 mini starts at $699. Those are of course US prices. In other countries the prices tend to be higher though. iPhone 12 mini is without a doubt a better smartphone, as it should be, but is it worth the extra $300? The SE has the exact same design as iPhone 8, except for a now centered Apple logo. The mini is more modern with the dual cameras and the taller aspect ratio, with a notch instead of those big bezels, and a new old boxy design inspired by iPhone 5. Both come in a few different colors, and I think they both really do look good. It's really personal preference, but I definitely prefer the look of the iPhone 12. There's no need to mention that they both lack expandable storage and a headphone jack, but they do support an eSIM. The Mini even supports 5G. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal as coverage is very limited, but if you absolutely need to have 5G, your decision is very easy. Now both are built incredibly well and have held up quite nicely. Granted, the Mini is only just over a month old, while I've had the SE ever since April. The Mini is flawless though and should last you longer, as it has a new ceramic shield front glass, which is supposedly very tough. The SE doesn't have a particularly tough glass, just has a regular glass. It's not even Gorilla Glass, and it kind of shows. I have quite a few scratches on it despite being fairly careful with it. Now they're not super dramatic, but you can see them. Now one thing I did want to mention in terms of durability, they both are dust and water resistant, but the iPhone 12 mini will last longer and in deeper water. But I personally don't think this is a big deal. They're both very small smartphones, at least for modern standards. If you're coming from iPhone 8 or older, they won't feel particularly small to you, but for someone like me who's used to the most modern smartphones, these feel tiny. Now funny thing actually, the SE is a physically larger smartphone, but has a quite significantly smaller display. That is of course due to the low screen to body ratio with the massive bezels. It actually feels like I'm using an old smartphone. Personally, I think the big bezels on the SE are unacceptable for today's standards, and in a few years this thing will look absolutely ancient, but I've also heard people say they don't really care about how it looks, or rather that it won't look ancient, like a relic, more nostalgic. So if you agree with that, you can definitely go with the iPhone SE. The 12 mini on the other hand looks a lot more modern, no doubt about it, but somehow it's still not up to par with some of the other Android flagships with that big notch. It does have fairly small bezels, smaller than actually any other iPhone, which looks great. But if you put it next to a modern Samsung phone, it looks a little old. One-handed use is refreshingly easy. The SE has a more curved design, which makes it a bit more comfortable in the hand. The Mini, on the other hand, is lighter. It actually feels like a toy, but sits securely in the hand thanks to its more angular design. A quick note on fingerprints and smudges. I found them both to attract quite a few, but the problem was a little less on the Mini, and if you use a case or skin, it won't be a problem at all. Back when I reviewed the SE, I was pleasantly surprised with its compact size. The David amongst the Goliaths. But that was not enough for me to fully commit to the SE, because unfortunately the screen was small and subpar. It has a 4.7-inch LCD panel with a slightly above 720p resolution. The Mini on the other hand has a 5.4-inch 1080p XDR OLED panel, which is miles better. It's sharper, gets brighter, is an OLED, which means you get perfect blacks, and it supports HDR. It's a little hard to explain, but it basically means the whites are brighter, blacks are darker, and everything is just a little more vibrant. Now don't get me wrong, the SE doesn't have a terrible display. It's certainly better than your iPhone 7 screen. The colors are accurate and it gets fairly bright, but it's just nowhere near as good as the screen on the Mini. Now one thing to mention, while the Mini has a larger display, when watching videos, for example, you don't necessarily benefit from that. Because the Mini has a taller aspect ratio, but most videos are filmed in the aspect ratio of the SE, 16:9, so you don't really get any more screen real estate. And speaking of videos, they both have very good stereo speakers. They both get very loud, sound rich, not quite as good as the larger iPhones, but definitely up there. And I wouldn't really say one necessarily sounds much better than the other. To unlock the phones, you have Face ID on the iPhone 12 mini and Touch ID on the SE. Surprisingly, I actually found Face ID to be more reliable. Speed is about the same, but since you have to wear a mask everywhere now, I found myself typing in the PIN code on my mini way more often than I would have liked. It actually got really annoying. A fingerprint scanner is a lot more practical currently. Now let me quickly talk about performance. On paper, the mini is better, but in day-to-day tasks, you really don't notice it. Even in graphically intensive apps, they both basically perform equally as well. The mini does have a little more headroom for the future though. In terms of software, they both run the exact same version of iOS 14 with the new app library and the widgets. Of course, you get all your favorite Apple features like AirDrop and the improved iMessage. There's finally support for picture-in-picture, and you get app clips, just to name a few. The great thing with Apple is that you get updates for years to come. You can expect software updates for 5 years, which is awesome. If you're considering one of these two iPhones and you're coming from an Android phone, let me quickly tell you about this great program by this video sponsor, Wondershare. The transition between the two operating systems is actually fairly smooth, but unfortunately you lose all of your WhatsApp data. But with Dr. Phone, you can seamlessly transfer all of that data from an Android to an iPhone with just one click. And it of course also works vice versa. Dr. Phone is available for both Windows and macOS. It lets you backup, view, export, and restore your social apps, chat data, and media. Get up to 85% off Dr. Phone by using the link in the description below. And thanks again to Wondershare for sponsoring this video. Now, since they're both very compact smartphones, one of the things you're probably wondering about is battery life. Both are not amazing. They don't last as long as their bigger brothers, but especially the iPhone 12 mini did impress me. It is exactly 1mm thicker than the SE, but has a 20% bigger battery, and it shows. It lasted me through most days with an average of 5 to 5.5 hours of screen on time, which is more than I expected. By the way, I did not use 5G. I would assume that would drain the battery quite a bit more. The SE, on the other hand, did not last as long, around 4 hours of screen on time. It got me through a regular day, but if I use it a bit more, I would have to charge it in the evening. If you want to know more about the battery life and how these two compare, I made a whole extensive battery test. Link is up here or down below. Go check it out. For charging, they both support fast charging. It's slightly faster on the Mini, but the SE has a smaller battery, so charging times are around the same. Now, one thing you do get with the SE that you don't get with the Mini is a charging brick. Yeah. Now, they both also support wireless charging. The Mini even Apple's new MagSafe charging, but by the way, it also works on the SE. It just doesn't have the magnets for it to hold it in place, but it charges just fine. But really don't buy it just for the SE. It's way too expensive for that. Well, lastly, let's talk about the camera. The iPhone SE uses the exact same camera as iPhone 8, but with improved image processing thanks to its newer chip. iPhone 12 mini has the same camera setup as its bigger brother, the iPhone 12, with an improved main sensor and an ultra-wide. In good lighting, it can actually be quite hard to tell the difference between the two. They're surprisingly close. The mini really has two benefits, an ultra-wide and the night mode. First, the ultra-wide enables you to get shots like this that otherwise are not possible. I didn't use it that much, but it can come in quite handy. The night mode, on the other hand, is a lot more useful in my eyes. The SE absolutely falls apart in low light, and the Mini is just so much better, so much brighter, so much clearer. So if you take a lot of night pictures or in low light situations, the Mini is definitely the way to go. To conclude, both are very good smartphones and definitely your best options if you're looking for a compact device. Which of the two you should buy really comes down to your priorities. If you just want a good smartphone that does the basics well, or you don't want to spend that much money on a smartphone, or you just simply prefer Touch ID, then the iPhone SE is a great option for you. If you, however, take a lot of low light pictures, need slightly more battery life, really care about your display, or simply want the best of the best, but in a small form factor, then the iPhone 12 mini is right for you. Personally, I much prefer the iPhone 12 mini, but I do understand the appeal of the iPhone SE. If you want to buy either of the two, check out the links in the description below. They have the best deals and the most up-to-date prices. A quick note, if you're an absolute power user, I can't recommend either of the two. Check out the iPhone 12 or maybe even the iPhone 12 Pro Max instead. I have videos coming up on those very shortly, so make sure you're subscribed and you've hit the notification bell to not miss those. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button, leave a comment down below on your thoughts on iPhone SE versus iPhone 12 mini, and I'll see you guys in the next one.